Okay, welcome everybody. I'm joined by Btwixt and I'm also joined by Brizer, and we are going to be discussing the 1990 movie Lord of the Flies. Now, there was one that was released in the 1960s, which we will be going back and forth to, but this movie was directed by Harry Hook, and I'm probably going to butcher these names, but they're starring Baltzar Getty, Chris Furr, Daniel Pilippi, and James Badgedale. It was produced by Lewis M. Allen and written by J. Preston Allen under the pseudonym Sarah Schiff, based on the 1954 book by William Golan, and the early version was released in 1963. I will be talking about the 1991, and the pair of these lads, it's more or less the same, but the pair of these lads will be going with the 1963 one. So, first of all, very welcome to have you Btwixt and Brizer. How are you keeping?
I'm fine, yeah, and thanks for inviting me on Irish Fenian to talk about this. I think we're going to come across some very interesting scenes in both films. The films are practically the same. They're based on the novel from the 1950s by William Golding, and yeah, there's a lot to discuss in this.
Yeah, again, thanks for inviting me on this one, guys. Yeah, it's a film that I saw years and years and years ago when I was about the same age as these young lads that are stranded on this island, maybe a little bit older, and I didn't remember much about it. All I remember was that they were stranded on the island and things went pretty bad and whatever, but I didn't, it didn't make, it just was a bit of a scary type film to me at that age, but it was good to see it again. It really is, and it's quite deep and quite profound in many ways, and there's a lot of things in there. So yeah, looking forward to chatting about this one.
Okay, so I suppose in the first scene that we see, there's a group of schoolboys and they're in the water, and they're after crash landing on in the water, and they end up paddling on a raft, and they end up on this deserted island, and they haven't a clue what to do. It's becoming night time, and they soon realise that they're thirsty and they're hungry, but then they decide it's best to get some sleep, and we'll figure something out tomorrow. And then the next day, Ralph, who later becomes the leader, he finds some water, and the others start exploring the island. And then we have another chap. There's Piggy. He finds a conch, a conch that and it becomes a thing where if someone wants to speak, they hold on to the conch, and that's you to start speaking, and then they start foraging, for little bits and pieces and that, and and then like Ralph then starts to say oh, we need to keep the fire down, up above, so that in case any planes or choppers flying by, they'll see us. And he I think he just, it was unanimous. It was he's the leader, but someone pointed out, but Jack's the older one, but Ralph is the colonel or something. I think they're like Boy Scouts or something, I think. But then things start going well. They start to build a camp and collecting firewood, and Ralph lights a fire. Yeah, this was a very genius part. They couldn't light a fire, but Ralph gets Piggy's glasses, and he says, "Hold on, we'll see if this works." And through the sun, the fire breaks out. So they have fire, and I thought that was very clever. But yeah, so it's basically a lot of young lads. The older ones, I'd say, would be about 15, and then the younger ones maybe 11, 12. So they're looking up to these you know, teenagers, you know, as like their leaders, because the pilot is sick. I think he has a fever or something, and they just leave him. I think they have a mosquito net around them, and so yeah. Where will we go from here?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Like, that's obviously the 1990 one. The beginning of the 1963 one is just, you just see Ralph and Piggy waking up or somewhere on the island, wondering where they are, and they're a bit confused. And it just seems to be the two of them. And so it actually starts off where you see there's a kind of a war going on. So it's hard to know whether this was in World War II. But then when you look at the weapons and the planes, it looks like it was much later than that, say in the 60s or something, where maybe a World War III type scenario had broken out. And like in World War II, children were evacuated to safe areas out of the big cities, and it looks like these kids were being evacuated to other countries. And the plane crashes somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, and the pilot on this one didn't survive. I think he was found later on the mountain, though, but that's not quite sure if that was actually him or not. But the plane anyway got washed away. It or just sank or something. But all the kids survived. Well, at least seems to be most of them all survived. And then they find the conch on the beach. It was like a big seashell, and Ralph was able to blow into it. It was Piggy who told him how to actually do it. You know, breathe in deep and blow out, and it made like a horn noise. And other kids that were on the plane, but were maybe just in different parts of the island, heard it. So they all kind of came together. So they're obviously on the same plane, but they didn't know each other. They're all school kids. I don't think they went to the same schools either. Some of them came from probably more posher schools, and some came from more, you know, ordinary middle class type schools. And so Ralph is a kind of sensible kind of kid, you know. He's you can see he's a bit of an alpha male, you know. He's sensible, he's intelligent, and you know, he's obviously brought up pretty well. And he kind of says, right, we've figured out that there's water on the island and there's plenty of fruit, and so all we do is make shelter. We've got the beach and everything. We can go swimming. It's all going to be fun, and the most important thing is to light a fire, so that if a ship or goes by or a plane goes above, and they can see us and we can get rescued. So that's all we have to do, is just sit tight and just you know, we'll be all right until, you know, hopefully help will come. And so then Piggy is a kind of like you know, a small little chubby guy who's a bit, you know, you can see why kind of kids poke fun at him. He's very short-sighted, so his glasses, got very thick glasses. And as I said, that was very clever how they used his glasses to light a fire. And again, but he's got a kind of a little bit of common sense about him too, you know. And even though he can't do very much, he's a kind of a voice of reason in many ways throughout this film, I thought. And he's an endearing type of character, you know. And even though the kids kind of poke fun at him, they kind of liked him as well, you know. So and then you had Jack, who was an older kid, and maybe same age as Ralph, maybe, but maybe a little bit older. And I think he came from a posher type school, because that when they arrived they're from obviously another part of the island, they were dressed in these gowns like of a school that they went to, like an Eton or somewhere like that, you know. And he was a kind of again, more of an alpha male, I suppose, than Ralph, but he was a bit kind of stubborn and a bit kind of, you know, wanting to be the boss. And so they took a vote as to who'd be the leader. And so there's about, say, 30 kids on the island, I'd say. This is in the 1960s film anyway. And they all took a vote, and they voted for Ralph to be the leader, and Jack kind of just accepted it, but he wasn't that happy about it. But at the beginning, everything kind of starts off pretty well, and they're all happy enough. As I say, they're all swimming in the sea and they're having a bit of fun, and they're eating coconuts and mangoes and all of the tropical fruit that was on the island, bananas, whatever. And they even found they saw a couple of wild pigs, but they were thinking of killing the pig, but they weren't ready for that yet. But as we see as we go through the movie, they do. But so yeah, lots of interesting characters in it, and lots of it's interesting to watch how things develop as the film kind of gradually moves on. So I'll hand over to Btwixt now.
I first read the book when I was in my early 20s, and I bought it in a second-hand bookshop in Dublin. I remember the cover of the book. It was a childish drawing of a boy with thick glasses, and one of the lenses was smashed. I thought it was a fantastic cover, and I enjoyed the story immensely. Now, this film, the 1963 version, it starts off, as Brizer has already mentioned, it starts off with, it has a number of images first, and you've got a lot of noise, like the sound of bombs, this type of thing. And you've got a plane, and you can hear the plane, and then there's the sound of a crash. And the first two characters you see in the 1963 version are Piggy and Ralph, and they're walking along the beach, and it seems like they're the only ones on the island. They're looking for the rest of them, whatever. And Piggy finds, I think it's Piggy who finds, I can't remember which of them finds the conch, but as Brizer said, Piggy explains to Ralph how to use it and how to blow into it. And Piggy tells Ralph a secret. He tells him his name, his real name, but he says, I just hope nobody will ever call me the nickname they used to call me. And he tells Ralph that they used to call him Piggy. And when they come across the other boys, Ralph immediately tells them that Piggy's nickname is Piggy. And Piggy is really upset by this because he thought Ralph was his friend and he thought he'd shared a secret with him. And now, you know, first impressions and all that, he was the laughingstock of all the boys. And the name Piggy, obviously he was short, he was fat, and you know, he didn't get the name for no reason with his whatever his body, his physiognomy. But the idea that they call him an animal, he's already been considered an animal by the rest of the boys. It doesn't bode well for good old Piggy. Now, I would say Piggy is the representative of science, technology, and civilization. He's very well spoken. He seems to be a wise old man trapped in an 8-year-old or 10-year-old's body. He doesn't like childishness. He doesn't like immaturity. And you hear him throughout the film saying, oh, these silly kids, you know. He's a kid himself, but he doesn't consider himself a child. Jack, we find him later, and as Brizer said, he's from a different school. He's from a posh school. They all wear gowns. And when it's put to a vote, you think that Jack's going to win because he has a lot of his schoolmates with him wearing the gowns. But they vote for Ralph. And Jack accepts it, you know, reluctantly, he accepts it. But I think in his head, he's thinking that all he has to do is bide his time. And sooner or later, he'll be running the show. Ralph represents law and order. And he's the one who has the conch. And the conch is the symbol of order. Once it's heeded by the rest of them. And you can see Ralph when the boys are becoming a little bit too boisterous. They're starting to suddenly chanting. They chant silly rhymes or violent rhymes, whatever. You can see Ralph flinching a bit. He looks very uncomfortable. And he knows he can't overdo it with the conch. He can't, you know, blow into it every time, or he can't shout every time. He has to draw them in every so often, try and bring them back into the fold of civilization, of order. So yeah, that's all I have to say for now. There is one other thing I read before we come on in regard to the 1963 version. It was shot on an island close to Puerto Rico, and a man went over there to check out how the filming was going, etc. And as far as I read, the boys were given basic provisions during the filming. And when the man was visiting the boys, he noticed that one of them was feeding lizards into the blades of a fan, an electric fan. And when he saw this, he was thinking of William Golding, and he was thinking, you know, so many thousand miles away, William Golding is chuckling into his beard. You know, the thoughts of this boy, an actor for the film, doing something that you would expect in the novel itself.
Yeah, Ralph seems to have those. He's very young, but he seems to have very good leadership skills, and I suppose that's why he kind of, as Jack even said, because he looks like you won the election, you know, because they were all calling for him. But yeah, a thing you were saying about Piggy. The one thing Piggy says later on in the movie, I'm not skipping ahead too much, but he says, "We done everything grown-ups would have done. Why didn't it work? Things would be much better if Jack was dead." Now this is after Jack kind of takes control of the other lads, which we will come into, but what starts to happen then, and I'm talking the 1991 now, so there was no bombs dropping in this one now. It's probably just after World War or something, is it? That one. But yeah, what does start to happen though, things start to break down, and Ralph calls an assembly to tell, you know, to talk about it. He's saying that people are getting too lazy, you know. They're not keeping the fire going, you know. They're not, you know, fishing. They're not, you know. So they're, I don't know, basically getting sick of it. And it's probably not in the 1963 one, but one thing I found funny, excuse me, was that one of the kids said to another kid, you even took a shit, he says, in your jocks, and you sat down on it. And that's how lazy do are becoming. Like, so like Ralph tells them, you know, look, we need to be fishing, you know, while Jack though is saying though that he wants real food, hinting, you know, to the pigs. And you know, the kids are saying that, you know, things are being stolen on them, and what should they do with them? You know, because there's no law and order here. This is this is an uninhabited island, like, you know. So, you know, what are they going to do if someone steals things on them, or, you know, starts, you know, and later, as we see, you know, they commit murder and that, like, you know, so what can they do? But we can see that Jack is starting to go a bit tribal, you know, because he first starts going out and hunting on his own, but he's no used to it. You know, well, he has to get, you know, used to, you know, well, you know, sharpening a stick and, you know, trying to catch a pig. But the kids, like the younger kids, are asking them, can they go hunting with him next time and all, and, you know, and you can see that Jack, he's like doing something like years ago. He's carving a face into a rock. He is, you know. So like he's going very, very tribal. It's very weird for a white lad to, you know, look like that. But I suppose this is how civilization starts and that, you know. But I think one of the lads is spearfishing, and the other kids start throwing rocks at him, you know, and you can see that the division is kind of happening already, and I think he just catches one of them poisonous fish, a puffer fish or something. But there was one part in it where one kid asked, now this probably wouldn't be in the 1963 one, but one kid asked, what time is it? And the other kid says, what's the difference? And he says, if I knew what time it was, I'd know what was on TV. Then he asks, what day is it? And they start reminiscing about Alf. And because the other kid says it's Monday, he says, oh, I bet you, are you sure it's Monday? He says, oh, I bet you Alf is causing havoc and all that. And, you know, it's very weird the way they're like relying, well, like, you're out on a desert island. Why would you be, you know, why would you care about TV then? You know, like, I know what's going on, like, you know, on TV. But that's, and then they're talking about the pilot there at one stage. And Ralph, as the leader, you know, good leader, he says, oh, we have to take care of him. But Jack says, you know, we got to take care of ourselves. And he was like thinking about doing him in, like, you know, like maybe we should kill him, like, you know, because the pilot, I think it was Ralph at the start that saves him. And because the pilot was going down, he was sinking, he was unconscious, but I think he has this fever or something, so he's just kept on the beach. He is, but and then the pilot then goes missing, and one of the lads finds his trousers, and Ralph says he probably went for a swim, but the kid points out though, where's his shoes and belt? And then he goes, he went for a swim with his shoes and belt. You know, like, come on, you know, it's a bit ridiculous that was, you know. And then we start to see Jack and a few of the other lads now that they're starting to go hunting. They're hunting pigs now. And Jack is really getting into this, and he's really, you know, he's nearly get a pig to do. And from the blood on it, and they've only one survival knife, and from the blood after, he starts putting blood on his face and then on the other kids' faces. So here is where we come into, excuse me, here's where we come into the other camp, which are called the Hunters, which Jack forms, and then, you know, other people start going over to it, but other people stay with Ralph because they think that he's the better leader, but Jack is the one that's providing them with meat. So what did you think about that, Btwixt?
It seems that Jack has got it into his head that they're not going to be rescued, and that they've got to make the most of it. They've got to become hunters. They've got to hone their survival instincts. Ralph, on the other hand, believes they will be rescued sooner or later. They just have to put all their energies on keeping big fires going and all that sort of stuff. So there is a divide. And I think at the start, most of the boys believe in Ralph's strategy, but no doubt as they become hungrier and they're lacking protein, they start one by one going over to Jack's side. Also, Jack, he doesn't have as many rules as Ralph. He doesn't have as many rules. Jack, he becomes, you know, the latter part of the film, he becomes a warlord. And it's, you know, you see him in the 1963 version, just punishing boys, locking them up in caves, this type of thing, you know, locking them up, I say. But yeah, imprisoning them in caves. So it's, yeah, two different strategies. The boys are young, they're not mature, and, you know, kids generally, they're not able to plan long term. So I think Jack, for them, would be the better option.
Yeah, the 1990s is be a little bit different here, because in the 60s one, it's more of okay, so they all sit down, they're all on the island, and they think, okay, they elect Ralph as the leader, and Ralph being kind of a sensible type of guy, he's saying like, you know, we just bide our time, keep the fires lit, and we have fruit and we got water, and we should be able to survive on that until somebody comes along. And he said, you know, we got to have maybe have some rules and duties that people should be doing. And this is probably the only time where Jack actually kind of agrees with Ralph through the whole film. He actually says it. He says, I agree with Ralph. We got to have rules and obey them. After all, we're not savages. We're English, and the English are best at everything, you know. So that's the kind of, you know, that's, you can tell there that Jack goes to this an elite school, because that's the way they're taught, that the English are the best at everything, and we got to have rules and obey them, and that's it. But it's Jack who doesn't really follow any rules. He wants his own rules. So so they're all assigned duties, and so there's a couple of kids have to look after the fire to make sure that's kept lit all the time. Ralph kind of just oversees everything. Piggy kind of takes on the duty of looking after the younger kids, because there's about, say, 7 or 8 young kids like who are like 7 or 8 years old, who can't do very much, and they just, you know, so Piggy kind of, again, he's the old wise man in the kid's body, who's just there telling them stories about things and keeping them happy and keeping the spirits lifted, you know. And but again, you can see, so, and then Jack is the kind of the guy who goes, okay, we'll go out hunting, we'll go get the fruit in, and then they come across a wild pig running through the bush, and they think, okay, will we kill it? But they don't kill it first of all. They think about it, but they don't do it immediately. But as time goes on, they do kill it, and this is when they become a little bit more savage in their ways. You know, you can see it setting in then once they kind of kill the pig the first time. And so yeah, so as I said, you can see the division beginning to set in almost immediately, but not quite. And then Jack and Ralph, you know, even though they put up with each other, you can see the differences between them. And again, Ralph is just saying, like, settle down, guys. We'll just keep those fires lit, and we'll, all going well, a ship or a plane or something will go by and see the smoke and come in and rescue us. While Jack is like thinking, no, like, this is a great adventure. Let's go out and kill pigs, and we'll pretend to be, you know, wild Indians or something in the jungle, and we'll have a great time. And he likes this idea of, as you say, becoming like a bit of a warlord, as Btwixt said there. And as time goes on, you can see the split getting bigger and bigger. And the kids, like a lot of kids are behind. They're all behind Ralph at the beginning, but then one by one they kind of go on towards Jack's side. So yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that, and you go on to the next part of it then, Fenian.
Yeah, I can see the differences between the two of them now, you know, as we're talking about it. But it's still, yeah, it is more or less the same thing. But as, yeah, where are we next? Yeah, you see, in the 1991, they really only found fruit. There was a storm, and they only found fruit after it, when there was a hurricane or something like that. And then, like, yeah, as you were saying at the start, like, that there was fruit and that, so I can see, yeah, the way they changed it a bit. But meanwhile, though, the hunters catch their first pig, but the only thing is they can't eat it without a fire, and they're very lazy on lighting fires. If you've ever noticed, they always go up to Ralph and say, "Can we get some of your fire?" You know. But there's this must have been in the 1963 one as well. But one kid goes up to a cave and he gets attacked. And I'm not sure whether it was the pilot or whether it was just another man stranded, but that's what it was. But they think it's some kind of monster. And Jack uses this kind of to scare the others. It's like, you know, to keep them in line. And I do always say, like, is that a kind of an early form of religion? Like, is it all real? I don't know. You know, because, you know, society kind of needs some rules, you know. But yeah, Jack does use that to his own advantage, though, he does. And then the others, though, question it and say, but we don't believe in monsters, you know. But like, but he keeps on saying, oh, that the monster will get us, you know, that the monster will get us. But and then the Jack's tribe, I might as well call them a tribe, the hunters. He comes over to them one day. Now he's not there because, as you were saying, yeah, he is turning into a bit of a warlord, not bothering to come down and, you know, even ask it for himself. But, you know, they end up robbing the fire on them, you know, like without, you know, doing it themselves. And then they come and they say that Jack wants this survival knife. Now, there's only one survival knife on the whole island. I think they must have got it when they opened the raft. But they say no. Ralph then says no. The survival knife, there's only one. It stays here. It does. But then later, you know, they come with their spears and all their, you know, their painted faces, and then they actually rob the survival knife in a kind of an ambush, a little skirmish, I suppose you want to call it. And Jack then, to further put this monster notion into people's heads, he cuts the head off a pig and offers it up as like a gift, you know. This is like a gift for the god, like, you know, so that don't come after us, like. And then Jack comes over then, and it's mad the way he's doing all this stuff on Ralph, and you can see that Ralph's his crew is getting, you know, shorter and shorter. But Jack comes over and invites the others, you know, to have a feast, and he says, I'll give you meat and all that kind of way. And talking about him being a warlord, he kind of goes to his crew, now say it, and then the younger kids say, the chief has spoken, you know, as if like a real, like, you know, oh, he's the one, you know, he's the almighty leader. But then, yeah, the one of the kids wants to investigate this this whole monster in the cave, and yeah, he ends up going up. Like, he goes over to Jack's crew, and he's saying, like, well, where is this cave? And they, you know, don't even really know, but one of them just says, oh, it's over that way. And then he finds out that because the person or the kid that was in there, first of all, stabs the your man, so he's dead. And your man has this or the kid has this glow stick, and he's looking at it in the dark, and he finally he just looks at it, and it's a human. It's a man, it is. And he then runs on the beach while Jack or Ralph won't take any Jack's meat. It actually sounded a bit weird there, but the pig meat. But as the other kid is running up on the beach, they then run, and they then go. Jack shouts out, "Oh, it's the monster! It's the monster!" And they end up just killing him with all the sticks. So they're after committing murder now. So what do you do in a lawless society like that? I'll throw that, Brizer.
Yeah. Right. What I'll do, just so people get an idea of the kind of the characters in this film, so we know who we're dealing with here. So first of all, you got Ralph, and he's the kind of the young kind of leadership type of guy, and the boys elect him as leader, and he kind of represents order and civilization and good leadership, and he sets out to we'll build huts, and we think ways of improved chances of being rescued, like lighting fires. And at first, all the boys are on his side, but then it declines as the boys then defect to Jack and turn to kind of the savagery. And then you have Jack, he's a strong-willed type of guy, and he represents like savagery, violence, and power. And at the beginning of the novel, of the film, he's not very happy at losing the leadership, though he accepts it. But he kind of he tries to form his own kind of group or tribe, and brings them into the forest where they hunt the pigs, and then smear their faces with the blood and all that kind of stuff. And then again, as you said, they bring up this idea that there's a big monster or beast up on the mountain, and he's very dangerous. And I think one of the other younger lads went up the mountain and saw what was actually a dead pilot on a parachute. I mean, in the 1990s one, it looks like there was the pilot was still alive, but in the 1963 one, the pilot wasn't there. So. But he probably did jump out of the plane and with a parachute, and unfortunately he landed on top of that mountain and he was killed. So he was lying, the dead body was there, and there was a big parachute still standing there. So when the young kid saw that, he thought it was a big monster, came running down. There's a big beast or a monster up on the mountain, and then Jack uses that influence then over the rest of the boys to instill fear into them and get control over them. And then you've got Simon, who's a kind of in the 1960s version, he's a kind of a blonde guy, a small, spiritual type of guy who's, he's got a voice of reason in the rivalry between Ralph and Jack. And then you got Piggy, who's, an intelligent type of guy, and he's very talkative, and he's got a lot of good ideas, and he kind of represents the rational side of it all. He's of humanity. But he's got asthma. He's got, he's a bit fat, and he's got very poor eyesight, so he's a target of scorn and bullying. And then you got Roger, initially he's quite a very quiet guy, but he becomes more violent as he joins Jack's side, and as he rises to power, and he ends up towards the end of the film actually killing Piggy by pushing a rock over the edge of top of a cliff down on top of Piggy. So that's just to get just to get people up to speed on who we're talking about here. But yeah, so so once they figure out that, or once the rumor has gone around that there's a big monster or beast up in the mountain, and they're all afraid. It's Piggy who's saying, "No, there's nothing up there. That's ridiculous, right?" He tries to kind of, again, the voice of reason here. Come on, guys, there's no monster up there. We haven't seen anything. We don't know what's, there's no point in this. We just have to try and get through this. But the rest of the kids aren't convinced. You got to remember, you got young children who are easily kind of persuaded on things like this, particularly beasts and ghosts and monsters and things. So, and so you can see that kind of gap then between Jack kind of sees this as an advantage over Ralph, and he says, right, we got to find this beast and maybe kill it and whatever, right? But if we can't kill it, then we have to do a kind of a ritual. So they kill the pig, and they cut its head off and put it on a spear, and say, right, that's there for the monster, to say that we know who you are, or maybe, here's an offering to you, or something like that. And they end up then eating the pig, and then they kind of, you can see when they're eating it, they're just pulling away at the flesh and eating it like quite savagely. Like these boys are obviously brought up very well mannered, and they eat with knives and forks and the napkins and all that. And this time here they are kind of greedily kind of pulling away at the flesh of the pig, and even then to a point of like smearing the blood and the grease and whatever all over themselves and laughing. And they kind of, you can see them enjoying this, and this is great fun, And as you said, then it's innocent Simon then who who goes up to the mountain and realizes that the beast is actually just a dead pilot. And he comes down the mountain again to try and tell all the boys that it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a pilot, but they mistake him as the monster. But I think Jack kind of realizes that this is a chance here now. Let's go get him, probably knowing that it is Simon and not a monster. And all the boys attack him and kill poor Simon, and which is a pretty sad kind of scene. And then, as you said, we're now dealing with a murder, and things are beginning to break down here pretty quickly. And Ralph is faced, Piggy is challenging him on this, like, what do we do? We can't. Well, no, Piggy he was involved in it as well, and he feels very guilty about it. And Ralph was saying, like, this is not on, we can't be doing this. And so, yeah, I'll kind of just pass it over to Btwixt on this one then, because this is where it kind of gets interesting now.
Yeah, so once again, the conch represents politeness, order, etc. And they even say at the start, it'll be like school, that you put your hand up and wait, and then you'll be given the chance to speak. But as the film progresses, that breaks down. You have a lot of spats, a lot of arguing. It turns into a typical parliament in any supposedly civilized country. The beastie, that's what they call him in the 1963 version, the beastie. You don't know where he is, you don't know when he's going to strike. And yeah, it turns out it's a dead pilot, but it's the location of the dead pilot because he's on the very top of the island. He's way up. It's almost a mountain. He's on the summit. So he's on the highest point of the island, and that means he's above them. And in their imaginations, he's looking down upon them. He's waiting for his chance. And the fact that they don't even really know how to describe him, they just call him the beastie, and he comes at night and all this type of stuff. And this is very useful for Jack if he can scare the rest of the boys using this beastie creature. They will instill more confidence in him because he's the one who will smite the beastie, etc. So yeah, I think it's very good. And as Brizer said, Simon, I think they go up. A few of them go up at the start of the film to investigate, and they all run back down the mountain. And then later in the film, Simon goes up to check it out, and he gets a terrible fright. But I think as Brizer said, I think he sees that it's a corpse up there. He comes running down to tell them the news. It's dark by the time he gets down. And I think there's enough light because it seems like there's moonlight. So you do get the impression that the other boys, some of them, I would say definitely Jack, would have seen that it was not an animal, that it was a human being, a little boy. But they're in such a frenzy and they're all excited, and they just decide, we'll just go after this thing that we've seen. And I think they attack him with spears and stuff like that, and they kill him. And it's probably the one time that Piggy isn't very honest. Later he's speaking to Ralph and he's saying that they couldn't really, they didn't know that it was Simon or something, that it was just an accident. And I think that's where Ralph breaks down and he says, "Oh, Piggy," as if, Piggy, you were the rock, you were the steady guy. Now you're starting to fall into fantasy and fabrication. So yeah, I think that is a good scene. And as you lads have said, it's a turning point. Murder has been committed. This is what separates, so-called civilized human beings from barbarians, murder. And in the middle of the film, when Ralph's leadership is fading, there's a very good scene where he's trying to get the boys to listen, and they all go off running off, I don't know, to play some stupid game. And Piggy tells Ralph, he says, you know, blow the conch, get them to come back. And Ralph says, if I blow the conch and they don't come back, they'll know that I'm no longer in control. And I thought that was very good. That was very clever. Ralph knows his power is almost gone, but he doesn't want to speed it up. Let's just say that much. Piggy's glasses, that's another thing. Piggy is useful on the island as long as he has his glasses, because they use his glasses to start fires. And even when one of the lenses has been smashed, they can still use the other lens for fires. But when it's decided by Jack that they're going to take Piggy's glasses and keep them, Piggy's goose is cooked. He's no longer useful to anyone. And I'm sure if cannibalism had set in this film, Piggy would have been the first one to go. The pig head is another interesting thing. They are in a way creating a primitive religion. The pig head, they're not going to eat it, obviously, so it's there. It'll generate a lot of flies, that's for sure, in the tropical heat. But it's there. The buzzing of the flies seems to make the pig head speak in a way. And I think is it Simon who, in the 1963 version, he's for about a minute, he's just staring at that pig head. He's kind of hallucinating. But yeah, they've set up a religion, and things are only going to get worse before, in a way, they'll get better.
Just as you were talking about Piggy there, kind of like saying, oh, it was an accident, you know, like after he killed the other child. You know, he is trying to, you know, because he was there as well, so he's like trying to get off a bit. But Ralph is just, you know, he's like, what are you talking about, like, you know? But then I don't know whether this was in the 1960s one, but two kids from the Hunters then show up to Ralph's camp, and the cheeky bastards, they're looking for the fire, but I suppose, you know, it's because of Piggy's glasses that leads the fire. But Ralph wants to talk about, excuse me, what happened last night, and the two little kids say, "Oh, we weren't there. We slept early." You know, which was, you know, that's like, you know, as if like, oh no, I wasn't at that, you know, feast last night, you know, lying bastards like. But meanwhile, Jack though is enforcing a bit of law and order though. Yeah, now this is in the 1990s one, but he has one of the lads like flogged and whipped, and says any criminal that's gonna go on like that, they're gonna go over to that island and starve. And you can see that he looks very happy when his tribe, you know, are carrying out his orders and that. So, you know, he's gone so tribal, you know. And I suppose in the 1960s one, like with English kids, like, yeah, that'd be very weird, you know, because that's not what you know, the way things are. I'm not going to get into, you know, you know, the other things, what tribes are and that. But then like Piggy is talking to Ralph. Now I'm just gonna add this in because this would not have been in the 1960s one, but it's a bit of Soviet propaganda. This, you know. Piggy's talking to Ralph about building a raft and says, you know, I'll do it. I think Ralph then says, yeah, I'll do it if you do it, you know. But Piggy says, but what happens if we're rescued by the Russians and then taken prisoner? because I think somebody knows, and it's a silly name, Major Dingle Dime or something, says that if the Russians invaded the USA, they could make them do the Olympics. And Ralph just breaks out laughing, you know. And then that's, I think later on that night, that's when the ambush again, and they rob Piggy's glasses, you know, because there's only him, Piggy, and Ralph left. It's the last two. And then, as I said earlier, yeah, at that point, then Piggy says, "We done everything grown-ups would have done. Why didn't it work? Things would be better if Jack was dead." And Ralph is saying, "You don't mean that, you know, you don't mean that at all." And then he's like, Piggy's so upset with his glasses. Excuse me. The two of them then go to see Jack, you know, and it's all this kind of halt, you know, like real, you know, who goes there? And Ralph says, "There's only two. You know who it is. There's only two of us." Yeah. But they go to see Jack, and the pair of them, then Ralph and Jack start having a stick fight, you know. They start like duking it out. And then Piggy then blows on the conch, and he says, I want to speak, I have something to say. But as he's talking, there's one sneaky little bollocks up on the roof, rolls this big huge rock, and then it just hits him on the head, and boom, he's dead again. So that's murder number two, you know, like, and nothing's happened. Well, of course, what can you do? That the kids on an island, there's no old Bill around or whatever, police, you know, nothing like that at all. But Jack then again, he looks impressed, you know what I mean, and they all just start throwing rocks then at Ralph because he's on his own now. And then there's a part then where after that, there's two kids that start talking about it's called the monster in the 1990s, or they refer to it as the beast. But the question is saying, we didn't believe in monsters. And the other one says, I'm pretty sure we don't. I found that a bit weird, you know. But anything to add to that, Btwixt?
Yeah, not much. Just in the 63 version, it's the same. Piggy's demise is the same as you described, and it's kind of ironic that he's he's standing way down, you know, practically at sea level. They're up on the cliff, and he's saying, like, you know, I've got something to say, damn it, you know, something like that. And in his head, he believes that the conch still grants him powers, and I think they tell him at some stage that the conch doesn't work over on this end of the island. But he's looking up, and he has it in his head that if he blows the conch, you know, the magical sound of the conch, the boys will, you know, they'll see sense and they'll listen to what he's got to say, because what he's got to say is so important. And as he's about to get into his speech, the rock comes down on him, and that's the end of him. And there's like a silence for several seconds in the film where, you know, the boys realize that, I think they realize that any one of them could be next. You know, that two murders on the trot, and anyone could be murdered by anyone at this stage, because law and order has completely broken down.
Yeah, just to follow on some other points there, like the name of the film is The Lord of the Flies, and as you said, Btwixt, it's all about that, the pig's head, after killing the pig, they cut off its head and put it on a pole, and it's a kind of an offering to the beast, you know. As you said, it's kind of a new religion, so they're moving away from the ordered life that they lived in England to now becoming more primal and more savage in their views. And also when they start smearing themselves with blood and all that, this is another sign that like they're breaking they're coming free of the whole idea of an ordered society where we're now on this island and we can do what we want, and it kind of liberates them from all that. The rules and orders, when they set out at first that we're going to have rules, the rules dissolve very quickly, and so this allows them to act in a more animalistic way, in a primal way. So and that's kind of then leads to the murder of Simon, and then eventually Piggy, and then just the whole idea of the conch shell. Again, it's used to bring the boys together for meetings on the beach. Again, it's a symbol of being civilized and having a democratic type of society. And but as soon as they start going more primal and animalistic, they lose touch with that, and the conch shell, as you notice towards the end of the movie, it's discarded. They don't kind of need it anymore. And then you have the fire, of course, which is very important because it's lit on the top of the kind of the small mountain, so that if ships or planes could see the smoke. And it's also as they start chasing pigs and whatever, they forget about the fire, and there's a point in the film where the fire goes out. Ralph is very annoyed at Jack because Jack brought most of the kids after chasing the pigs. The fire goes out and the plane has actually gone overhead, and that was a chance lost there of being rescued, so Ralph is very pissed off over this with Jack, and then they kind of just, that's when they lose their desire really to be rescued, and it's all a case of let's do whatever we want, let's become more savage, as because the chances of us being rescued now are gone, and then the whole idea of the beast up on the mountain is, that's a kind of a savage image anyway of a beast, and it's like a devil persona, and it's because of the beast that it's there. That's the way the boys start behaving the way they are, because they're afraid of this beast, so they become more savage in their ways. So so what happens, of course, then is that poor little Simon gets killed, and you can see the strains now between Jack and Ralph really becoming wider and wider. And as you said, Piggy is the only uses he has really on the island. He can't do manual work, he can't go hunting, he can't light fires, but he has the glasses, which is the main tool. It's mainly used to light a fire for the signal for any passing ships. But Jack now needs it now because they're hunting the pigs, and they need the fire to cook the pig, right? So they rob Piggy's glasses, and so you can see now more and more of the boys are heading over towards Jack's side, and it's pretty much just Ralph and Piggy who are left together, and they try and go and reason with Jack and the other guys, and they know a few that there's the two twins. I think it's Eric and someone else. Can't think of the names now offhand.
Is it Sam and Eric? Is it?
Hold on, I have it here somewhere. Yeah, Sam and Eric. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so. And they tell them that like Jack is going to be coming for them now, and you better go back and be ready. But as I said, they try and reason with Jack and the other guys to we got to stop going down this road because we're going to be doomed otherwise. And then of course what happens is that I gotta get the names again. Roger, he's the quiet guy initially. He's up at the top, and there's a big rock on the top because they're on the top of a bit of a cliff. And Ralph is climbing up, and poor old Piggy's behind him there, but he can't go up much higher, so he's kind of down at the bottom of the cliff. And Roger pushes a big rock over, and lands on poor old Piggy, and he dies. So now we're really into a bad situation here. That's 2 of the young lads now dead, and so it's pretty much Ralph on his own now. Yeah, that's why we're kind of moving towards the end of the film here now. But yeah, I'll pass it back now.
Yeah, as you were saying, Brizer, like Jack has this thing of like, we're never getting off this island, you know, so we might as well make it our home. But Ralph, you know, always has that, you know, like, oh no, we are going to be rescued. We will be. But and because you're saying that we are coming up to the end of the movie, and it's a bit funny. You were saying that they were climbing to get up, and someone throws the rock. In the 1990s one, Piggy just has the conch, and he's, you know, shouting and but one of them just throws it off like it was intentionally. It wasn't just, you know, an accident or anything like that. Yeah, man just did it. And then Ralph is then looking at it, he's like, no, he's like, you know, what he's, you know, doing. And then, like, they're saying, you better get out of here, you know what I mean? Jack's going to be coming for you. And then that's when, now, I'm not sure whether this was in the 1960s one, but Jack is then running through the fields, and the fields are all down for, you know, for that tribal effect. And they're all with their spears, and they're chasing Ralph, and they're chasing him. And finally then Ralph trips over, and he looks up, and he sees this US Marine. And he's just like, he breaks down crying. He does, like, you know, he's because this was his, you know, we are going to be rescued, you know, this was his thing, and it's come true for him. And then the hunters then come up behind, and Jack's just looking, and you can kind of see the looks on their faces as if, oh shit, we're actually in trouble here. Because, you know, they see the chopper come in, and then there was like a kind of a boat, like the way they got off in World War II, the Americans. There was one of them style boats or something, or not a boat, but whatever it is, like a fucking tank or something. But yeah, like, and I do always wonder, like, because it just kind of ended there. I do always wonder, like, what would happen to them, you know, because they'd obviously have to take the bodies as well back, but nothing would happen to them, you know, like, I wouldn't say, because they'd say, they were kids, they were out here surviving on their own. But yeah, but it's just mad, the little kind of tweaks from the 1960s to the 1990s. But yeah, that's really from my end. Although, no, actually, I've one more thing. You sent me in an email Btwixt, and you were talking about the film, and you said about does civilization and society, you know, make us all, you know, not, or, you know, people with morals, or are we all savages at heart? And that is a very good question, because if I know we, you know, always go on about, you know, law and order, and it's too much and that, but if you don't have anything at all, you know, you can see what happens, you know. You just look at that film and you say, yeah, and nothing happens to when people murder. So I don't know. It was a very good question that you actually put to me there. I'd say no, because, well, I don't know about years ago. I'd say now, well, I suppose, but then, you know, you're brought up within society, but I don't know whether, like, I could just go out and murder someone else just for the hell of it, or, you know. So I don't actually know about that one. Like, you know, are we all savages at heart? I'll throw it out to whoever. Brian.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, I'll come back to that. So yeah, just going in towards the end of the film then. So Ralph is pretty much on his own now, and the Jack and his tribe are doing all these dances and chanting and all the rest of it, war dances, and they're coming after him, and they basically want he's kind of hiding, but they said, okay, we'll smoke him out. So they started setting fire to everything. So everything's burning. So they're basically in a stage of self-destruction here now, because that's the source of a lot of their food and their wood and everything that they need. So, but no, we're going to get Ralph and basically even sacrifice him to the beast, so to speak. So, you know, they've already sacrificed Piggy and Simon, so now let's get Ralph. And then they chase him across the island, and it looks like Ralph is doomed, really, because they're all coming after him, and he's going across the beach, and then he just comes across, he sees these two shoes and socks and a military guy in shorts and whatever, and uniform, standing there, and he looks up and he's like, whoa, you know, he just realizes, oh, we've been rescued, you know. And they look around, and then all the other boys then are running across the beach, and then they see him as well, and they just stop what they're doing. The whole island is pretty much on fire now, and the sailor is just kind of going, oh God, what's happened here? And all the boys just break down crying, you know, like they've been saved, but they kind of realize, like, what actually have we done here? And I'm just thinking, if they weren't rescued, what would have happened here? Would they have, if, you know, they were killing all the pigs, so if the pig population went down, would they turn on themselves? Probably. And the question is, as you say, what would happen? Are we savages at heart, or do we have this sense of morals and constraint, and, you know, we don't do things like that? But, you know, you do see it among a lot of people when they're in a desperate situation. They'll do desperate things, and I think that is there, unfortunately, within humanity. I do think it's there. You know, obviously we try to rise above that and hope that that would never come to be. And it's this whole idea, whether do we live in a society where there's law, whether you like the laws or not, or do we live in a kind of an anarchist type society where there's no laws and everyone looks out for themselves? And a lot of people who are on the kind of anarchist side, who are, you know, who are quite awake to stuff that's going on, they don't like government and all that kind of thing, and we'll all agree with that, but they think that people won't succumb to that they won't start turning on themselves. But I'm not so sure about that myself. I think it is very possible. And I think it's just a very kind of enlightened person, or someone who innately knows that this is all wrong, would never do something like that. But I think that's the question that this film puts really out there, is, okay, these are all just young kids, okay, and there's no adults around, and they just lose the plot because it was kind of a bit of an adventure, and now they're turning on themselves. And but would adults do the same thing? That's the question. And yeah, so I'll pass it over to Btwixt for that, for his final thoughts on that, on the ending there.
Yeah, so I did say that in the email, Irish Fenian, and when I read the book many years ago, that's what I was thinking about. You know, is it the system and all its rules that makes us moral and makes us think that we're the carriers of morality? And, you know, you think of the education system, the rows of desks, the bell goes off every 40 minutes or 45 minutes, the end of one class, the beginning of another. And, you know, it's the idea that the government can hack out brutality, it can curb our instincts. And then we have to wonder, is our morality really ours? And then you have to wonder, is there an objective morality? Because it's very likely that someone else's morality is not going to line up with your morality. And then, you know, you get the extreme where you have the scamdemic, where the morality becomes one of becoming a passive consumer, staying at home, not going outside, watching never-ending Netflix episodes and imbibing sugary drinks, and that makes you a moral person. Becoming a fat pig in a way. So it is a very important question. I do wonder though, is because I know when I was a child, I'm trying to think of my morality. What I thought, obviously, you had your parents and you had older relatives, and you had teachers, and in the Irish countryside, you had the priests, and you were constantly being pushed in a certain direction, and you were told that was the moral way to go. And what happens though when a system can, constantly push you in, a direction that becomes narrower and narrower, and you end up with what we saw from 2020, and I think it's still going on, even though it might not be as noticeable now. The scamdemic, the New World Order, Agenda 2030, whatever, where people think that it's morally good to punish people who decide that they don't want to chance a corporation's mysterious cocktail. They don't want it in their bloodstream, and these are suddenly considered terrorists. These are the immoral people. These are biological terrorists. So it is an interesting question, but I do think that, or I'd like to think that, although when we're children, I don't think children generally are moral. Children are very honest. They're brutally honest. And as they get older, that honesty is beaten out of them by the system. They become adults, and they become liars and whatever, generally. But I do wonder, is there a natural progression that when you're a child, and when you get into groups as a child, you can buzz off each other and you can do things you would never consider doing on your own. When you get into that group, when you get into the herd, you do terrible things in a way. And I wonder though, is there a point for many people when they're about 25, 30, definitely after 30 years of age, where they acquire their own morality that is generally against committing wanton acts of violence, trying to screw up someone else's life for no reason at all, but for the fun of it. Does that sadism, does it disappear as we get older? In some cases, it doesn't. But yeah, getting back to the final scene of the film, Ralph is being pursued by Jack and his posse, and this goes on for a bit in the 1963 version. Ralph is into vegetation. He's hiding. Every so often he has to run. If one of the others sees him, they make this sound, and it's to tell the others that Ralph is close by and they should all come hither and track him down for the animal that he is. But it's a very good scene at the very end. He gets onto the beach and he's running, and he becomes so exhausted because he hasn't been able to sleep, more or less, and he's exhausted, and he's running, and then he gets down on his knees. He gets down and he's crawling along the beach like an animal. It's like he's given up. He's accepted that he is the prey, and that in any second he's going to be slaughtered. So he's on all fours going over the sand. And that's when he sees a shoe and he sees a leg, a trousers. He looks up and there's a sailor. And he's relieved, and there's a boat in the background. There are more sailors in the boat. And as you guys have said, when the others catch up to him and they see the adults, the boys become ashamed. There's shame written all over their faces, and they're looking up at the adults. In this case, the single adult male on the beach, he's in uniform as well. They're looking up, and it's as if they're suddenly reminded of where they come from. Kind of upper class England, the sun never sets and all that. And it's as if they're looking into a mirror for the first time in weeks or months, and they realize that for all their ideas and their highfalutin talk, they've been reduced to savages. And I leave it there.
Yeah, just to go back to you mentioned about kids that are very honest, and they are, like, when you're talking about, like, say 7, 8-year-olds, but when they start getting into their teenagers, they're lying little bastards here. So I do always wonder, is it the system that changes them that way? But back to that whole every savages thing. Yeah, maybe we probably are. It's just that laws and things like maybe the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not trespass. That was probably, I don't know whether if it's real or not, but I do think that because I was brought up Catholic, I hope it's real, but I don't know. Could be just a lot of whatever, early form of government, But yeah, maybe we are just savages, and if we were in a situation like that, it's survival of the fittest. So yeah, I'm just thinking that again. So I don't know if any of you want to give a final thought, or if it's done.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just some again talking about like who's the arbiters of morality, and is that the reason why we need a government? Because we would be savages if we didn't have a government. You also have to look at the government, like the government reminds me of Jack, They want to do their thing and impose their morals on us, and we see that all the time. Most people, the vast majority of people, just want to do their own thing, live life as they need to, don't impose themselves on other people, but also they work in a kind of a sense of community where they help each other out and all that kind of thing. And that does generally work when you look around you, because no one's out there killing each other on the streets at all, And when government breaks down, people tend to rally together. I remember quite a few years ago, not that far from where I live, like in the Midlands, there was the River Shannon overflowed. There was a lot of flooding, and houses were totally destroyed. There was no government help whatsoever, very little. And people just rallied together and helped each other out, So there is that as well. But then you have to wonder, if there's a total economic collapse and things break down, what happens then, Is it going to be survival of the fittest, or do we work together to try and work something out, which is what Ralph was trying to do at the beginning. So it's an interesting one, but then there's also this fear of an economic breakdown, and this is what the world will descend into, and a lot of people buy into that. So I think it's a case of just, you look out for yourself, obviously, number one, and that's not being selfish, it's just looking out for yourself, because if you can't look after yourself, you can't look after others, and you kind of just lead by example, I suppose, in many ways. And okay, if there's laws out there which work, yeah, I can agree with them. There's some laws out there which I would agree with, but there's lots of others that I don't. And when they start those laws impose on me, I have a problem with that, because I don't impose myself on other people, and that's what we're seeing with this whole woke mentality, this LGBT stuff, where they're pushing all this gay kind of agenda on people and saying this is the way it is, and most people don't want that, but they're saying no, this is the new moral order now, and you've got to follow it. And so there's always going to be that tension between that kind of one side and the other, and I don't know what's the way around it, really. I mean, I think we just have to find our way through this life, and without getting too caught up in all of this, because it's all, emotions get pulled into that. And once you're dealing with something with high emotions, all rational thought goes out the window. But if you sit back and kind of be calm around and be rational, you can generally sort problems out pretty quickly to everyone's benefit, you know. So, so yeah, I mean, there is that question: would we turn to savages if things break down? It's possible. I haven't. I don't. Is there any historical examples of it? Maybe there is. You know, but there's a lot of bad stuff has happened around the world down through history, and people seem to pull back together again. You know.
They were sorry. They were probably all eaten. They were, so that's why there's no records of them.
Probably, yeah. So, but you know, we're still here despite all the shit that humanity has gone through down through the centuries. We're still here, and I think we will still continue to be here. But there's just going to be bad shit along the way, and we just have to kind of face through it. And we're all going to die anyway, so we might as well make the most of what we have, you know. So that's my final thoughts on it anyway. Yeah, I enjoy the film. I recommend it to people to have a good look at it. You know, either I haven't seen the 1990 version of it, but the 1963 one I think is more. It's probably more closer to the book, I think, and the actors are all English, and it very much represents the kind of the old days of the empire type of thing, and it's got more of an atmospheric side to it, you know. And I think that's the one I would recommend people to watch. Well, that's the one I've seen, so I'd say get people to watch the 1963 version. And as I was read the book as well, I haven't read the book, but I'd say the book is a good read as well. So yeah, and I'd recommend it. I'd give it an 8 out of 10 because it does make you think a lot about who we are as a species, you know, and it does ask a lot of questions, and we need to think about these things. And yeah, so I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
I'd also give it an 8 out of 10. The 1963 one, I think it's very well put together. It was on a shoestring budget, but it does seem pretty classy. Now, a lot of the boys as well, they weren't actors from the theatre. Now, some of them were, but many of them weren't. And you would think that would be a bit jarring, but they say that it makes the action seem that bit more realistic. The fact that they're not, you know, professional little actors. Something we should say is that fear is a very powerful tool, and it's fear in this movie that sends the boys on a certain trajectory, and that is the fear of the beastie. And you would have seen the same in the scamdemic, the fear of death, the fear of becoming infected with a killer disease. It made people do terrible things. It made them fall out with family members. I'm sure it drove people to suicide. Fear. And, you know, it's nice, the idea that we can be reasonable, but most people, the overwhelming majority of people, are not going to be reasonable when they are absorbed in fear. And, you know, I've mentioned this before, but, you know, this fear leads women on the street. It's usually women, they're the most fanatical when it comes to, you know, whatever the latest rules are. They want to keep their social status, or they want to push their social status up. It was the women, the hall monitors on the streets, who would shout at you to put on a mask, or they would threaten to phone the cops because you didn't have a mask on. Women you didn't know from Adam. So I should say as well, Irish Fenian, that, you know, this whole thing about morality, you know, is it drilled into us? Can we become moral human beings of our own volition, you know, outside the system? There is a very good example of a character from the movies and from literature, and that is Hannibal Lecter, because on the one hand, he's a total savage. He's an absolute psychopath. On the other hand, he's very cultured. He wears a suit. He's an academic. You know, he's the type of guy who would convince you to trust the science. And there's a sort of paradox there with characters like Hannibal Lecter. And I think that's why those films were so successful, because people couldn't believe that you could have someone so cultured on the one hand and so barbaric on the other. I'd like to thank Irish Fenian for presenting this, and I'd like to thank Brizer for coming on as well. I've enjoyed this, and I wish everyone a good evening. If you're watching this, on Irish Fenian's YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like and you share it around.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Btwixt and Brizer for coming on to discuss this. And I think we had a good bit of a yarn tonight, and it was very interesting. So cheers about you for coming on, okay?
Yep, enjoyed it a lot. Thanks a lot, guys.